Chapter 16 Bury My Love September 1979. The healer from India is a woman with dark curls and brown eyes. She's short, but fills the room with a presence that puts Regulus at ease, despite the fact he knows she's here to deliver bad news. On the bed, he does his best to remain impassive, calm. He slips his hands under the sheets so no one sees him curl them into fists. Sari comes into the room with the new healer. She looks tired, but not yet defeated. Regulus doesn't know if Sari is simply delusional or if there is really any hope for him. A part of him wishes they would all give up, that they would tell him they've reached the end of the road and this is as far as they can go. It'd be easier if people stopped pretending a miracle cure might present itself at the 11th hour. Are we waiting for anyone else? The healer asks. No, Effie and Monty say together. Regulus shifts on his bed. The meeting had to be held in his room and not an office because he's lost feeling in one of his legs so roughly he can't move it at will anymore. It's a new symptom, one that Sari wasn't expecting. So far, it's the one Regulus hates the most. He's no longer allowed his little strolls up and down the corridor. All he can do is go to the toilet in the corner of his private suite, and he needs crutches for it. It seems this illness is determined to rob him of even the last scraps of dignity he has left. Very well, the healer clears her throat. I've concluded my investigation. For the past 2 weeks, I've taken samples and studied Regulus's blood, the flowers, and the growth inside of him. We used different techniques in Asia, so we applied some of the most successful ones for diagnosis to Regulus's sample. The growth is a new name. Regulus hates it. It almost sounds positive. Growth is something to strive for, isn't it? But there's nothing good about the vines and roots cracking his bones and punching through his organs. Sari believes it's one of those vines that robbed him of the use of his leg. If it's grown around his spine, it might be trapping a nerve. Do you have a theory or not? Monty asks. Regulus is grateful that he wants to get to the point. They've been here before. So far, no one has had any answers. I do, she says, and Regulus can't help the way his breath hitches. Effie and Monty exchange a cautiously hopeful glance. You have a diagnosis? The atmosphere in the room shifts. There's tension and a frustrated brand of sadness clinging to the rails of his hospital bed. But for the first time in forever, there's anticipation too. Regulus wishes Sirius or James were here. He wishes he could hold their hands. Receive this news with the 2 people he cares most about in the entire world. All of the times for them to be away, he thinks. It had to be the one time they are going to get good news. Sirius and James are in Ireland for Quidditch game. The league started last week, although Regulus is doing his best to avoid any and all information about it. The last thing he needs is to watch his replacement flying for the Magpies. In another life, he is in Ireland too. He flies around a stadium full of people chanting his name. He looks at his brother, and Sirius smiles back with pride instead of that watery weak thing he masters this day. In another life, James is his teammate. They race each other after practice, maybe. They fly over London to watch sunsets on their own brooms, bantering and laughing and maybe, just maybe, leaning into one another. Not a diagnosis, but a theory, the healer says delicately. Hope is such a frail thing, capricious and spoiled. It had expanded inside of Regulus without his consent, and now it pops, leaving behind the devastation he doesn't want or need. Better that his brother and James aren't here. At least they were spared the brief moment of false relief. Go on then, Monty says. In his voice, the same dejection Regulus feels. What's your theory and how does it help us? I think Regulus is cursed, and I think he was born with it. Born with it? Effie asked, paling. The healer nods solemnly. What's happening to him doesn't have any of the markers for illnesses. There's no parasite, no virus, no external energy of any kind. Regulus wasn't hexed or cursed by someone, not in this life. I don't know what it is that's ailing him, but I think you should bring in some experts in curses. But that doesn't make sense, Regulus mutters. Everyone turns to look at him. The healers, and the two people who are the closest things to parents he has. No one in my family has ever been sick like this. I can't have been born with it. I was normal until I wasn't. Unfortunately, the healer says, her voice kind and soft, some curses can skip generations. Others might be carried from one life to the next. Sometimes it's the parent who's cursed, but it manifests in their children as a punishment. Can you think of anyone who might have wanted to harm your parents? Regulus laughs a bit, I think, jagged like the ribs that haven't healed inside his chest. His biological parents are some of the most despicable people alive. They have no shortage of enemies. Sari clears her throat, glances at Effie and Monty. I know that you are Regulus's parents in every way that matters, but I think we should explore contacting the Blacks. We should... No, Regulus says immediately, firmly. No, we are not contacting them. If you want to talk to experts in curses, let's do that. But we aren't bringing in those people. I refuse. Very serious when I need him, Regulus thinks desperately as an argument breaks out in the room. The healers with their pragmatism and the Potters defending Regulus's wishes. Effie looks on the brink of tears, but she insists that respecting Regulus is the most important thing. If he had the strength, he'd hug her, thank her. If his brother was here, he'd understand. No one in the Black family will help them. If anything, they will gloat in the face of Regulus's fate. They will celebrate his demise because he left their house and tragedy befell him. They will see it as punishment. Toujours pour. Regulus left, and he became tainted by illness. There is no way he's giving them the satisfaction. If you attempt to contact the Blacks, I will leave the hospital. His voice cuts through the noise of the adults arguing. They turn to him, faces taut with tensions. I will disappear and live out the rest of my days alone. Do not try to go behind my back. I'd rather die than involve them. Regulus wakes with a start. Someone is in his room. It's too dark. He can't see anything, can't hear anything but the steady drip of the bag fitting the tube in his arm. But there's a presence. He can feel it. His heart thuds weakly against bruised flesh and splintered bones. His mind whirls with possibilities. Did someone break into his room? Paranoia sets in. The healer's words ring aloud between his ears. He's cursed. Someone did this to him somehow. And what if... His weakened lungs lurch. He extends one hand in front of him to ward off whoever is here, and uses the other to feel around for his wand. Before he can find it, however, a silver orb appears above him. It illuminates his brother's self-satisfied grin and James's mischievous eyes. Merlin, Regulus breathes, relaxing against the pillows. His heart still hammers painfully against his ribs. You almost gave me a heart attack. Sorry, Reggie, Sirius says bashfully. You weren't sure if this was a bad idea, but you know us. I mean, it's... What time is it? Regulus asks, a yawn forcing his jaw open. Now that he's not having a panic over some mysterious figure coming to finish him off, he's actually quite happy to see his brother and James. 3 in the morning, James informs him cheerfully. We just got back. And you came here? Regulus hates the way his chest warms and his cheeks flush. He's so pale now. It surely gives him away. In answer, his brother and James remove the invisibility cloak to reveal their official Magpie's kit. They didn't even bother changing. Sirius's boots are streaked with mud. James looks like he rolled around in a meadow. There is a bit of grass stuck in his hair. Regulus blinks and looks away. It hurts to see them like this when he should have been with them. One of them. We wanted to check in on you, Sirius says, rounding the bed to come stand close to Regulus. You know I don't like it when they send us away, but there's nothing we can do. It's all right, Regulus smiles at his brother. I won't be upset because you miss a day. Well, I would be, Sirius says firmly. He doesn't say anything else, but Regulus hears it all the same. Your days are numbered, and I am all too aware of that to take a single one of them for granted. James comes around to stand on Regulus's other side. It's ridiculous how much Regulus has missed him, even though he was here yesterday. He's been here every day. They haven't gone flying again because James refuses to be the cause of another one of Regulus's bouts. But they read, and they play cards, and they talk. Before his leg gave out, James took him to the cafeteria one time to eat pain à chocolat, dodging nurses and healers to make it downstairs. How are you feeling? James asks. Same, Regulus replies. The healer finished her research. No diagnosis, but she thinks I'm cursed. She what? Sirius says, alarmed. He buries his hands in his hair, eyes wide. And then, all at once, he relaxes. Who? Well, if it's a curse, can't a curse breaker deal with it? This is good news, right? They are looking into it, Regulus explains calmly. He refuses to get his hopes up again. He's not sure he will survive another crushing disappointment. They are going to bring 2 experts, I think one from Argentina and another from Japan. They are the best healers specialized in this area. I'm not sure when they'll be coming. Hold up, James puts up a hand. Regulus is shocked to see his shaking. You being cursed means someone did this to you. James and Sirius exchange a glance, and Regulus is reminded of the fact that all of their cheerfulness and generally positive vibes, these 2 are some of the best duelers Hogwarts Hall has ever seen. In another universe, James and Sirius would have been dangerous people. Did the healer say anything about that, Reggie? No, he says, shaking his head, but she wants to call the Blacks. Immediately, Sirius stiffens. That's the worst idea in the history of bad ideas. Regulus smiles at him, relieved. His brother is on his side no matter what. That's what I told them. Wait, James says, and both Sirius and Regulus's head swivel around to stare at him. What about Andy? Regulus cocks his head. What about her? She's your cousin, and she's a Black. One of the good ones, too. Do you think she'd be any help? She doesn't know I'm here. Huh? James turns to Sirius, incredulity written clear on his face. You haven't told Andromeda? I thought... Sirius shakes his head slowly. Reggie didn't want to tell her, not yet. No, she just had a baby and... He looks helplessly at Regulus, who has no real interest in explaining why he doesn't want to tell his cousin. It feels like the final nail in his proverbial coffin to tell Andromeda, who is the only important person completely in the dark about Regulus's illness. To James, he explained in short, "She's busy. I'm sick. There isn't much for her to do except fret, and with a new baby, I don't think she needs that. Reg, she's family. You've told everyone else. You should tell her, not wait until." James stops abruptly, eyes flicking to Sirius and then quickly away. "You just shouldn't wait. She should know. She cares about you, and I think she would be a lot of help. I'm sure there's information you don't know or have access to about your family that she can get. Finding out who cursed me won't get rid of the curse." "No," Sirius agrees, "but it might bring us closer to answer that will get rid of it. Let's talk to her, Reg. You know she would be devastated to be kept out of the loop and not be able to say goodbye." Regulus sets his jaw, too tired to argue with either of them. "Fine, but don't get too graphic with the..." He gestures to the jars full of flowers. "Well, you know." Sirius nods once. "I'll send her a note and see when I can't meet with her. These healers aren't finding answers, Reggie. We can try to find some of our own in the meantime, yeah?" He says this last bit to James, who's watching Regulus with an unreadable expression. "Yeah," he says. "We'll find our own answers. Okay, Reg?" "Okay." He isn't sure he believes them, but it's 3 in the morning, and while he's happy to see their smiling faces, he's also exhausted. Sirius seems to pick up on it. He reaches out to gently ruffle Regulus's hair and gives him that characteristic big brother smile. "We'll be back tomorrow to say hello properly, not covered in mud and with grass in our hair." James squints at him. "There's no grass in your hair." "Wasn't talking about me, Pranks." "Oh, bloody. Thanks for telling me," James hisses, reaching up to run his fingers through his hair. It does very little to read the strands of grass pieces. His cheeks are tinged a deep crimson, his lips in a pout. "Still there," Regulus murmurs with a small smile. He watches James try to get the piece from his hair, and Sirius lets out a laugh that's little too loud. "Go, before you wake the whole floor and alert the healers. I don't want them to kick you out." Sirius squeezes his hand gently and shoots him a small but warm smile. James throws the cloak back over him and Sirius, but before he disappears completely, he gives Regulus a quick wink and mouths, "See you later." When both of them are gone, Regulus settles back against his pillows. His hospital room is too quiet after James and Sirius's presence. Always so big, taking up too much space. Regulus used to find it annoying. He would curl up on the couch, only to have his quiet disturbed by the absolute insanity that could be James and Sirius on Saturday afternoon. "Cut it out," he would tell them. "I'm trying to read in peace." They would laugh and tell him to join them, but before he could tell them to bugger off, they would already be on their way out to the garden. The stars are washed out by the bright lights of London, but Regulus still looks out his window and up. He searches, but it's not the right time of the year, nor is he in the right position to see Canis Major. Even Leo isn't visible from where he lies in the hospital bed. He closes his eyes, wishing James and Sirius were still here to take up all the empty space in his room. It feels too big without them, like Regulus is much too small for it. He regrets all of those times he told his brother to be quiet or told James to stop rambling on. So much of it seems like it exists on borrowed time now. James lies on his back on a grassy knoll, one hand pillowing his head and another curled around the underside of a slender thigh. The sun is high in the sky, but it's blocked by a halo of dark curls. Still, he can see just fine who sits on top of him, knees bracketing his hips. He's got one foot propped up, knee bent to provide something for him to lean against. How many times are you going to have this dream? As many times as I can, laugh. James grins, crooked and a little mischievous. How many times are you going to visit me? Regulus shrugs, fingers toying with the hem of James's shirt. As many times as you'll let me. James tightens his finger on Regulus's thigh, edging him forward. He looks beautiful out here in the sunlight. His cheeks are fuller, his lips pink and turned upward at the corners. Will you ever let me kiss you in these dreams? No. The answer is the same each time, but James's heart still plummets. It takes everything in him not to pout. Why? Do you really want the first time you kiss me to be in a dream? I think it will be the only time I get to kiss you. Regulus plants his hands on either side of James's head, fingers curled in the grass. He looms over James, curls falling forward and into his eyes. Behind him, the sun sets his silhouette on fire. I don't think that's true. Yes, well, you're also the dream version of you. Regulus's eye roll is very, very real. You never remember these dreams when you wake up, so there's no point in letting you kiss me anyway. A small rock digs into his back. He shifts his weight, and Regulus moves with him so seamlessly. It's hard for James to say the next few words. It feels like a cruel joke for the universe to play, you know? Oh? Yes. I can't kiss you when I'm awake, and I can't kiss you when I'm asleep. That's cruel. Regulus lifts one shoulder in half-hearted shrug. But really, whose fault is that? The shadow of that smug smirk is going to drive James insane. Regulus. James! But it isn't Regulus's voice that comes from his lips. It's too deep, too tainted with something else. Not the lilt of the mischief and gentleness that dream Regulus leans on, but frustration, anger. James! It's not Regulus's voice he hears anymore. It's Raphael's. James jolts awake abruptly. His heart is in his throat, and his entire body feels as though it just survived a long freefall. It takes him a moment to get his bearings. He's lying on his bed in his flat. That much is clear. He doesn't know what time it is, but he's dressed in nothing but boxer shorts. His muscles ache from the game. All of the soreness still new. It's unlikely he slept for more than a few hours if this is how he feels. Raphael leans over him, furry contorting all of his features. Good morning. What time is it? James asked, voice thick with sleep. 8. Which means James has slept for exactly 2 hours. Fuck, he mutters, rubbing at his eyes. What are you doing here so early? That's definitely what you ask your boyfriend when you haven't seen him for 2 weeks, or sent him any letters, or bothered to check if he's alright. Raphael's anger isn't even a contained thing. It's living and breathing and growling. I'm alive, by the way. Though I'm not sure you care. James reaches for his glasses on the nightstand. I care, I promise. What were you dreaming about? Raphael's tone gives James pause. He can smell the fight they are about to have from a mile away. Still, for the sake of appearances, he tries to play dumb. Huh? Your dream, James. I've been trying to wake you for 5 minutes. Do you know what you kept saying? James swallows, but his throat is too dry. He has his suspicions even if he can only remember his dream in pieces. There is only one thing that would result in Raphael's sudden and unbridled anger. You kept calling him Regulus. The names sound all wrong on Raphael's tongue. Just Regulus. Over and over and over. Raphael looks at him for a long, tense moment before he asks, Did something happen while I was away? Guilt washes over James, though he tries his best to keep his expression neutral. It's not right that he's keeping Raphael around, just so he has someone to cushion the blow when the inevitable happens. Besides, Raphael does have a point. James completely forgot all about him while he was away. It didn't even occur to him that there was someone he should have contacted. Absence didn't make the heart fonder. In Raphael's case, unfortunately, things went more like out of sight, out of mind. It's unfair. It's not the sort of boyfriend James wants to be. But he's afraid. And he's desperate enough to try to salvage the unsalvageable one more time. Shifting back to sit in the bed, James looks up at his boyfriend and blinks. The picture of confused innocence. A man who's still in the threshold between dreams and waking. What do you mean by that? Lots of things happened. A healer from India came to see Reg. She thinks he's cursed. And the league is on again. We won our match last night. Coach is happy. Oh, and Regulus lost feeling in one of his legs. It's been hard on him. I can't even imagine what it must be like. Remus finished a short story that was accepted in James. Raphael grits out, eyes blazing. You know what I'm asking. Did something happen between you and him? What? No, James says, immediately offended. He's not been a good boyfriend, he knows that. But he hasn't cheated on Raphael. He never will. Something like defeat flickers in Raphael's eyes. He sighs, wraps a hand over his face, then crosses his arms over his chest. I don't get it, James. I really don't. What am I supposed to think? You spend all of your time with him. You talk about nothing but him. And now you dream about him too. How do you even... Raphael lets out a grunt of frustration and turns around, hands tugging at his hair again. James stares at his back. Shame makes his skin hot and prickly all over, like he's wearing it wrong. Suddenly he feels this isn't a conversation he can have sitting in bed half naked, so he swings his legs over and stands. I wasn't dreaming. It wasn't like that, he says defensively. I don't even remember it very well, but we were somewhere outdoors. So, no, I wasn't having the sort of dream you were worrying about. But you were dreaming of him, and I don't like that. James sighs in defeat. I'm exhausted, Rafa. Can't we... I slept for all of 2 hours. Please, can we talk about it later? Raphael frowns, taken aback. I thought, how's that possible? Was there a problem with transport? Too late, James realizes that this is only going to increase Raphael further, but there is no point in lying. Raphael gets along with Sirius. He's going to find out sooner rather than later. So, clearing his throat, he says, I stopped by the hospital with Sirius on the way back. That's why we weren't in until late. James doesn't add that he went back, that he stayed and kept Regulus company while he slept at intervals, that he only made it home when the 6 a.m. nurse knocked on Regulus's door to check his vitals. It's not a lie if it's simply an omission, is it? For a long, tense minute, neither of them say anything. The air is heavy with the taste of hurt and betrayal. Raphael has a right to be angry, James knows. He just can't bring himself to care all that much. Because what are 2 weeks out of Raphael's life? A blip. Insignificant. But for Regulus, every single day counts. When you are watching the week slip through your finger like prayer beds, knowing the end of the rope is rapidly slithering along your hand. Well, James wishes he hadn't hurt Raphael, but he's not sorry. Before he can think of anything to say, Raphael clicks his tongue and grabs his own chin with his hand. He looks like someone who picked a fight they couldn't win and is only now realizing it. I thought that it was him, the feeling of more that I kept getting. I thought it was him. Raphael mutters under his breath. He inhales deeply. When his eyes meet James, the fury has melted into sadness, pain, loss. But I had it wrong. It's you. That's why. Why what? James asked, heart pounding. What are you on about, Raphael? Speak plainly. You have feelings for your little brother, Raphael says. It's sharp, an accusation. The way he says it makes it sound all wrong. Like James's feelings are ugly and tainted. Like they are shameful. Like he should hide them somewhere no one will ever find them. The way Raphael says those words make James remember all the reasons why he's never allowed himself to face that truth fully. Why even though he knows, somewhere in the back of his mind he's convinced himself to bury it. It's better to ignore it than to ever see the people he cares about react like this to his feelings. Feelings he shouldn't have in first place. Giving in to anger is the easiest thing Jim has ever done. Fury masks shame. It covers despair and longing. It hides the guilt and the bitter tang of regret for something he'll never get to have. So, James gives in. He takes a step closer, fist clenching at his side. He's not my little brother. The glint of victory in Raphael's eyes lasts only a second before his own anger rises to match James's. That's the part that you want to focus on? Of course it fucking is. You are not even going to deny it, are you? You have no right. This isn't about you. Regulus is... Raphael is shaking. He cuts James off. Doesn't let him get a word in before he's snarling, throwing words like poisonous darts. Oh, don't give me that crap. I have every right. You are my boyfriend, James. Or did you forget? Do you wish it was him instead? If you feel something for him, what am I? Am I just an idea you liked? A convenient use of time, maybe? Are you using me while you wait and see if he wants you to? It's not like that, you don't understand. You will never understand, James shouts back. It's not. It can't be. Raphael doesn't get it. He doesn't understand that James was trying, that things were going so well, that he liked Raphael, that he'd been making progress towards normal and acceptable, towards getting over his unrequired crush that would never get him anywhere other than on the wrong side of rumor mill. Raphael doesn't get that if Regulus hasn't fallen sick, none of this would be happening. It was all just fine before. James was coping, hiding it, moving on. Regulus is a part of his family. He's Sirius's brother. And he, like Sirius, is as important to Effie and Monty as their own son. He lived down the hall from James for 2 years, went from stranger to friend, to something. A secret something. That's what he is now. Because Regulus is a lot of things. But what he isn't is for James. Never for James. And James was doing so well until that fucking curse sent everything spiraling out of control. It's complicated, Raphael, James mutters, looking away. Do you even care about me? Of course I do. James' breathing is shallow now and agitated. I do like you, Raphael, but it's not neat and simple, is it? Things like this never are. Then explain them to me. Because you haven't been mine for months, James. Raphael's chest heaves, and his nostrils flare. His eyes are wild, hair sticking up in places from him having run his hands through it so much. In truth, Raphael has never looked more beautiful and magnetic, and James simply doesn't care. What is there to explain? He's sick. And? Raphael asks. He's not the first and won't be the last person ever to be sick. I've never asked you not to be there for him, not to help any way you can. I've never said you shouldn't visit him. I've never begrudged you any of it, except the part where I ceased to exist the moment Regulus Black fell off his broom and... Raphael stops talking, staggers back. To James's shock, tears spring to his eyes. Raphael, I'm an idiot, Raphael says. It comes out broken, a moan. I'm a fucking idiot. I never stood a chance. The sudden change of pace leaves James reeling. His anger dissipates, and in its wake is confusion, guilt, and a little bit of sadness too. Raphael looks distraught, and James hates that he's the reason. Hey, James tries like he's placating a wounded animal. It's going to be all right. I need time, Rafa. I don't think I can do it right now. Not the way you want me to. Raphael laughs, brittle like dried bones. Was any of it real? What? With me, was any of it real? Did you really not know, or were you playing me the entire time? James holds his breath. He knows what Raphael is asking, but he can't answer. He's not allowed. He forbade himself from speaking it aloud ages ago, when he realized that the only possible reaction is the one Rafa had. Wrong. Shameful. Regulus isn't for James. He will never be for James. It doesn't matter how many times James says Regulus isn't his little brother. The truth of the matter is that to the rest of the world, they are family. And family doesn't feel the way he does. No one would ever be okay with it. Not his parents, not Sirius. I really like you, James says after a long pause. It's not a lie. It's also not what Raphael asked. I see. Right. Raphael straightens his clothes, opens the door. Well then, I guess this is goodbye. Rafa, James starts, stops, clears his throat. I'm sorry. No, James, you're not. Raphael doesn't look back. He walks out of the room and out of James's life.